We have some areas of severe weather across the east and deep south tonight, and we're going to be taking a look at that. Our Joe Rayo will be doing an entire radar tour. And more cold fronts on the way Wednesday and Friday. Plus, we'll have the Father's Day forecast, or some semblance thereof. All of that is coming up next, right here on the Joe and Joe Weather Show, which is brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York. Get your truck over to Omni so you can load up on all the mulch, topsoil, sand, and more, or anything else you need to make your home or business look great. 631-756-1125. No one has better prices. The website is
OmniTrueValue.com.
And Tempest by Weatherflow. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system and join the fastest growing weather observing network on the planet. I've got one, and I know a number of you folks who watch the Joe and Joe Weather Show have one. But in case you don't, the referral link is at the top of the chat board or on the descriptor to this video. And Joe, do you know that they don't have to use the coupon code Joe and Joe Weather Show this week because there's a Father's Day special. So instead of getting 10% off, you will get $40 off the retail price, which is $329. So instead of 10%, you're going to wind up with something closer to 17 or 18%. So use the referral code. Take a look at it. They've got all other sorts of gadgets and gizmos there for weather lovers, along with the latest in stylish weather fashion.
As Uncle Jed might have said upon hearing about that offer for this week, no gears.
Do you know, I actually heard a woman I was in Aldi's the other day, and I heard a woman. Do you remember when Fred Mertz couldn't find his glasses?
If it was a snake?
If it was a snake, it would have bit me.
Right.
I actually heard a woman use that phrase.
Really?
Yes. I wanted to just yell out, "Where's Fred Mertz?" You know? Oh, that was it was something I did not expect. Yeah, but anyway. Okay, so it's a Monday evening. Welcome to everybody tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show. Everybody on the chat board, those of you lurking in the background, you can join the conversation if you'd like. Just subscribe to my YouTube channel by hitting the subscribe button and turn your notifications on. Why? Because the Joe and Joe Weather Show is on Monday through Thursdays at 7:35 and Sundays at 11 a.m. Unless there is an apocalypse, we are off on Fridays and Saturdays. But every once in a while, we do pop up. So anyhow, Joe, you know that SPC watches this show on a regular basis.
No, I was amazed. I was absolutely amazed. You had outlined what you thought should have been the area of at least marginal risk yesterday, pushing everything up, encompassing much of the tri-state area. And lo and behold, yesterday afternoon, what did SPC do? It's almost as if they were watching and looked at what you were suggesting, because what they eventually put down yesterday was almost exactly what you had suggested earlier in the day. I'm amazed.
Almost as if they were watching?
Well,
almost.
We know that they do watch religiously, right?
Oh, I mean, really, they have it on a loop. They just watch it continuously.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of fell back in my chair when I looked at that yesterday afternoon, and I got a really good laugh out of it. And then even more so this morning, because when I looked at it yesterday, I looked at it yesterday afternoon, I was like, you know what, guys, I know you're trying to make it not look as if it was because we said something, but you know, you need to nudge it up just a little bit more. And then this morning I noticed they nudged it up a little bit more. And then this afternoon they nudged it up a little bit more. And actually, from what I looked at so far on the radar, I don't think there have been many severe thunderstorms that have occurred.
In addition to the marginal area, they now have up to South Jersey, because a couple of days ago, The marginal was only up to South Jersey. Now, not only is it encompassing the entire area, but now they have up to South Jersey an area of slight chance of severe.
Yeah. So why don't we take a look at the radars, shall we?
Surely, we will do that.
So that is your bailiwick. So I'm going to. You are now activated.
All right, and we will.
And I'm going to just bounce out of the way.
Well, let's first check out the folks over in. And I didn't even start it in motion. Let's go. How many hours do you want? 3 hours?
Do 4 hours.
Okay, we'll do that. We'll check first with our friends over in Upton, Eastern Long Island, the National Weather Service Forecast Office in New York City. And as you can see, we do have two distinct areas. Those of you in Connecticut, such as Dennis Cassia, you may very well have already seen wet weather coming from this area over Eastern Long Island, which has blossomed and widened out and has now moved across much of Connecticut in one way, shape, or form. Doesn't look like anything particularly heavy occurring with that particular zone of precipitation. But then over to the west of New York City, actually west, there's a broad area on the Pennsylvania-New Jersey border, and there's kind of like an arm that's coming up through central New Jersey and right on into the New York metropolitan area as we speak. So that area will be influencing areas in northern New Jersey and the western end of the Hudson Valley. And the way things are moving, Joe, it looks like, at least from this viewpoint, that the motion of the precip is from almost due south to north. The broad area is edging slowly east, but ever so slowly. So
this has been actually for the folks in Pennsylvania. This has been a bonanza because they've been abnormally dry. I was trying to remember whether they had moderate drought there or not when you showed the map yesterday. But either way, they needed they really did need the rain, and it's been raining through much of eastern PA for much of the day. So that's been a big plus for them.
You could see the back edge of this, and what's interesting is that over the next 6 hours or so, this is going to kind of pivot, if you will, in a counterclockwise manner. So the back edge is going to move to the east-northeast, lift up and through the immediate tri-state area, the Hudson Valley, probably, between now and, let's say, midnight or 1 a.m. But at the same token, as it's moving, a lot of the yellows that you're seeing here are also probably going to begin after sunset to fade out. So the intensity of these showers, while rather potent right now, may actually diminish some as the whole area begins to move to the east over, again, the next several hours. This view is from the Binghamton radar. Let's take another viewpoint from further up north in Albany, or Albany. And you can see, again, the Hudson Valley and points north, especially east of the Hudson, is relatively dry. And again, you'll have to wait for this area to kind of move eastward and pivot up and around through this area. And that will probably happen again between now and midnight. Let's take yet another look at things from around the Philadelphia area. And from Philadelphia, you see that the Wilmington, Delaware, Philadelphia area, they're getting hit with some moderate shower activity. But look, just as quickly as I said, pivoting up to the northeast, the back edge of the end of the precipitation, that has already moved past Wilmington. It's about to move past Philadelphia. And again, all of this pushing northeastward. There's that arm of precip I mentioned earlier moving into New York City. And it'll move through, it'll stop briefly, and then the last bit of precip, again, moving north and eastward, coming up from central New Jersey, that'll be arriving probably sometime later on in the evening. So that's how things look here in the northeastern part of the country, Joe. How about down in the south?
In the south. Well, RJM 2023 on the chat board said, which I think he's new. So welcome to the chat board, RJM 2023. You said plenty of rain now in Broadheadsville, Pennsylvania, and that's good. That's
yes.
Good.
I know it well.
You do?
I know that area very well.
Oh,
yes, indeed.
All right, so let's check out what's going on elsewhere, because this area of risk was rather large that was indicated by our friends at the Storm Prediction Center. And on the map right now, as you take a look at some of the watches in the purple, pinkish purple area, severe thunderstorm watches along the central Gulf Coast to the Florida Panhandle. We also have a severe thunderstorm watch that is up for northeastern New Mexico and into southeast Colorado. A couple of flash flood warnings there, those little red dots that you probably have to strain to see, but they're there. And flash flood watches up in northeast Colorado and southeastern Wyoming. Also, flash flood watches up in the Sierra Nevadas. By the way, I saw a story yesterday that talked in Yosemite that first of all, 50% of the snow, the snow in the mountains remains. Okay, so they've only melted about half the snow that has fallen, and there are rivers and particularly waterfalls that have been dry for the last up to 20 years are now spilling their banks big time.
Wow.
Huge, I mean, beautiful shots. I've been to Yosemite. I mean, beautiful shots of these waterfalls that just, well, they weren't waterfalls anymore because there was no water. Well, that's all changed. There's also some new waterfalls that have formed. So this snow cover, the record-breaking snowfall that occurred out in the western part of the United States, particularly in California, really changing the physical landscape of the state, which has been more often than not in the last 20 years in a semi to serious drought. So sometimes, there's always unintended consequences, sometimes good, sometimes bad, and I think in this case it's probably good. Now here's the risk area tonight from the Storm Prediction Center. So it's kind of like a sideways U that goes from that marginal risk from Long Island to the Hudson Valley to the Catskills, eastern PA, northern New Jersey. Radar doesn't seem to be showing anything of consequence. There was a tornado warning briefly near Harrisburg earlier this afternoon around 2 o'clock. It lasted all of about maybe 5 minutes before they took it down. Slight risk from southern New Jersey southward. A lot of the shower and thunderstorm activity has already played itself out in those areas. We have a slight risk from southern Georgia westward into central Texas, and that also a small area of enhanced risk, and that comes with a 5% tornado risk in parts of central Texas. And as we check out the radar, even in the southeast, I mean, there's a couple of severe thunderstorm warnings here and there. There's a few special marine warnings up in the Washington, D.C., Baltimore area, but they're going to expire before too long. There's a couple of warnings, one severe thunderstorm and a couple of special marine warnings in eastern North Carolina. Not much going on in South Carolina. A few cells as you head into Georgia and going into southwest Georgia. Then you have a couple of severe thunderstorm warnings up. One in southeasternmost Alabama, another one not too far from Mobile in Alabama, and then another one probably northeast, near Slidell or just north of Slidell in Louisiana and onto the Mississippi side. Meanwhile, up in eastern Colorado, getting there were 5 and now 4 flash flood warnings, some heavy rains and some heavy thunderstorms moving through there with a warning that just went up in one of the counties. And also a fair amount of heavy rains back in Wyoming, up into the northern Rockies, and also in parts of the Sierra Nevadas and California. So still very busy in places that normally go dry this time of year and just shut down as far as rain is concerned. It's been the exact opposite.
It is the exact opposite of what was going on at this time last year. And I might point out also that the Climate Prediction Center has now made it official. We are now in a El Nino weather pattern, and they are predicting that the El Nino that arrives, well, not arrives because it's already here, but the El Nino that evolves or develops by this upcoming winter, Joe, is going to be a strong El Nino, which would be bad news, I guess, for our part of the country, because strong El Ninos usually lead to, yeah, a lot of storminess, but you also rather mild temperatures. There would be a lot more rain as opposed to snow.
Yeah, you get overwhelmed. You get overwhelmed by the Pacific fire hose,
Unless,
unless. What if it turned out that this would be? I mean, considering the anomaly of what happened in the West this year. Okay, what if we had such an anomaly this coming winter where we had a combination of a strong El Nino with a strong NAO?
oh,
Now that would be that would be very interesting to see what could be the outcome of that.
well, it could be the outcome could be that people who had little to do with their snow machines here in the eastern United States, northeastern United States, if everything falls just right for all of you snow lovers, it may be that by the time we get to April, there'll be a lot of people out there who are screaming, "Enough already!"
Right. But we know the odds of that happening are, how shall we say, long. Okay. So let's get there first. We still got many months to go. Meanwhile,
Congratulations, Adam Lowe. Thank you. I mean, I wish I had the capability of being able to make such a statement so far in advance, but Adam Lowe has already declared, Joe, we've got to make sure that we write this down. It's the 12th of June, 2023, but Adam Lowe on our chat board has announced this winter is going to be a snowless winter or a blockbuster one, depending upon water temps off the West Coast.
but not in between.
But not in between.
Okay, just to be clear. Okay, just to be clear. Here's our Cioffi map, and let me make sure it's the 21Z. I don't think it is. It's the 18. Nope, it was the 18. So here's the 21Z. The warm front, the way they've got it, had it analyzed at 5 o'clock, Joe, just at about New York City. And I'm seeing, from what the obs were, the dew points on the north side were in the upper 50s. On the south side, they were in the mid 60s. I mean, that's not really much of a warm front. And also, well, 50 some places further north, dew points were in the low 50s. The temperatures were actually warmer on the north side of the warm front, probably because they had more sun for a longer period of time today, as opposed to places further south where it's mostly in the 70s, plus it's rained, so it's cooled off. So just sort of an interesting anomaly there.
It's interesting you point that out, because I was out a number of times with El Doggo today. And on each occasion, I kept saying to myself, well, should I or should I not? We had the air conditioning on Saturday because it was it was like 86 here. And I say to myself, well, oh no, was it 86 yesterday?
Yesterday was 86.
86 yesterday. So we turned on the air conditioning because, it was really getting uncomfortable. And today I said, well, should I or shouldn't I not turn it off? And I finally said, I'm just going to leave it on. To me, it felt a bit on the humid side, even though the dew points may have been down a bit. And but tomorrow, behind the cold front, we should definitely have some relief, both in terms of dry conditions, in terms of lack of smoke, and also in terms of lower humidity.
Oh, Quiet John, thank you so much for your generous super chat hit. Thank you.
Thank goodness.
I'm humbled. Whenever Quiet John does this, I'm humbled and very thankful. Thank you so much. Most appreciated.
Thank you so much, Quiet John.
The cold front, by the way, has made it through halfway across North and South Carolina and halfway through Georgia. It has led to weather conditions here last night. Now, I slept through most of it. I heard the heavy rain, but I was, I must have fell right back to sleep. My friends all told me that they were all up because the thunder was so loud. But we broke out, went partly sunny about early afternoon, and the dew points here have dropped off nicely, down in the 50s. The temperatures in the low 70s, so it's relatively pleasant here in the North Georgia mountains. The front extends across southern Alabama, southern Mississippi, and Louisiana. This is a little unusual. Fronts, they're at the time of year now where these fronts usually don't make it this far south, but that just goes to show you how far displaced the jet stream is to allow for a front to get down that far south. And then it sort of swiggles around as a stationary front in Texas, and then noses its way up through central New Mexico and into southwestern Colorado. So that's sort of setting up some upslope and setting off that heavy rain that we're seeing in southeast Colorado that the radar shows. The thermal lows have showed up in southern California. You can see that low that's in southern California in the deserts there, and it'll be there pretty much all summer long. Move. Sometimes it'll move to the east, sometimes it'll move to the west, but just kind of sits there. Meanwhile, on the satellite loop, which I shall now update and refresh for your enjoyment and your convenience, not a whole lot of lightning strikes at all with what's going through the Northeast right now. With what's coming up, there's no lightning strikes at all. You see them down in Virginia, North Carolina, coastal South Carolina, southern Georgia, and then right along the Gulf Coast across the Florida Panhandle back to Louisiana. And then also a considerable amount of lightning strikes going on in eastern Colorado with the heavy rains and the flash flooding there, and the concentration of moisture that is up pretty much through the Rockies and into the interior parts of the Northwest. Meanwhile, as far as the smoke is concerned, and I'll give this a quick refresh, I think I'm on the same page with you well, there's a little bit of smoke. No, there isn't. Actually, there's very little on the backside so far. And there's nothing in southeastern Canada, and there's nothing north of Lake Superior. You go further up in northern Alberta, and you see the smoke there that's moving eastward into Hudson Bay. But no, it doesn't look like there's anything here that's going to come down tomorrow. Now, this could change in a heartbeat, so at least for now, doesn't look like it's coming back for Tuesday. And it was pretty decent today, I would imagine, ahead of that front with the south wind and the southerly flow.
Right. And I mean, I had, I didn't see Garrison reporting, which is near my house, but Newburgh, they had good conditions, good, a good level below 50. So it wasn't so bad today. And tomorrow it'll be nice to see the sun, and it'll also be nice to see blue sky. I just want to address two questions on the chat board. One from Latex Dreams. Has she left you any presents, Rayo? Making reference to the dog. First of all, the dog.
I hope so.
The dog is not a she, it's a he. In fact, the dog's name is Mr. Sweeney. The family can call him Sweeney, but if he's ever introduced anybody, we say, you must call him Mr. Sweeney. And Globy Traveler says, low solar activity going to mess up the El Nino. Well, I'm not sure if you're on top of things, Globy Traveler. I know that in recent years, they've been talking about how with each solar maximum, which comes at an 11-year cycle, that we're seeing fewer and fewer sunspots. However, the upcoming solar max, which is scheduled for either late 2024 or early 2025, we have been seeing quite a bit of solar flares, of sunspots. We're seeing more solar activity now, leading toward the upcoming solar max in the next 12 to 18 months. More sunspots and flares now than we've seen in the last, I would say, 30 years. So it's not running the way some forecasters were saying. Some forecasters were saying, oh, each time we're supposed to get a lot of sunspots, it's going to be a lot weaker than the previous solar max. It ain't happening like that this year. This is an active solar cycle. So there certainly is not, if it keeps going the way it is, there ain't going to be any low solar activity to consider. And if there was no low solar activity, that's not going to mess up the El Nino, as Globy Traveler is suggesting. So you got to stay on top of things, Globy Traveler. This upcoming solar cycle is a lot more active than the last three. I mean, like 20 years ago, we weren't seeing any sunspots or solar flares around the time of solar maximum. And people were saying that we were heading toward another little ice age. But never underestimate the sun. I knew a gentleman when I was very young, much younger, when I was in my teens and 20s. A gentleman's name is Herb Luft. And Herb Luft, a gentleman, he was from Germany. He had a thick German accent, and he would study the sun. He kept notes, Joe. Every clear day, he would look at the sun, and he kept a notebook, and he would show. I've seen the notebook, not just a notebook, many notebooks, where he would draw the sun as a circle and X's on the sun's surface, indicating where the sunspots were. And sometimes when he's had a lot of X's, I said, "So what would you have predicted, Herb?" And Herb always said the same thing: "Only observe, not to predict. You can never tell from one moment to the next what the sun will do." And I've seen people with master's degrees and PhDs who have written papers suggesting, sunspot activity for the next 10 years or 20 years. And inevitably, all of those predictions, no matter how smart these people were, all of these predictions fell flat on their faces because the sun does what the sun wants to do. And in this case, all of you who have been listening over the years and hearing about, for example, the Old Farmer's Almanac, they've been saying, oh, we're heading toward much lower solar activity, and this means that we're going to be trending toward colder conditions in the next decade or so. It ain't happening. The sun
No, it's not.
We have sunspots, we have lots of solar flares, and so that kills that idea that sunspot activity will counteract global warming. So guess again or think again, sunspot activity is not going to be much of a player, I think, at least in the coming years ahead.
All right. Well, let's go back to the Storm Prediction Center and take a look at tomorrow, where we've got some thunderstorm risk in northern New England and eastern New England as well. Also, western New York and western PA and around the lower lakes. But we do have a marginal to slight risk covering the deep south again. And there's going to be periods where we're going to see these thunderstorms probably produce some pretty hefty rainfalls this week across the south. That comes with a 2% tornado risk. And then as we move on to day 3, which is Wednesday into Thursday, we continue to see a slight marginal to slight risk across much of the deep south and in the southeast. And also day 3, which would be for Wednesday, which is when we have the next cold front that'll be coming through. There's 2 of them this week, one Wednesday and one Friday, that we do have some general thunderstorm risk for the northern mid-Atlantic on up into New England. And, of course, also in the western plains and up the Rockies and into parts of the southwest and into California, general thunderstorm activity is noted. And WPC is showing this week, these next 7 days to take us to a week from today, 3/4 of an inch to 1.5 inches in much of the Northeast and back to the, let's call it the upper Ohio Valley. But look across the south, particularly in Alabama. That hatched area, Joe, is that brownish hatched area in eastern Alabama, east central Alabama, is 7 to 10 inches
Wow.
of rain being forecast. And that larger orange area, which doesn't quite get to me, is 5 inches. The red is touching me, and that's 2.5. So I'm glad at least if we wind up getting a couple of inches of rain this week, because I've been landscaping my front yard and I put all these perennials down, and this makes it really easy for me. I put them down and to try to put them down right before we get into some rain, and I don't have to worry about watering the new deers. In the meantime, still seeing some rain forecast, 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch, with a few areas a little heavier in parts of the Central Plains, the Central and Northern Rockies, and on up into the Pacific Northwest. So, on that note, we can take a look. I didn't look at the GFS all the way out yet, so I'm
You're still thinking about that
no,
tropical?
I'm just curious whether it still has it, because it's not going to happen. But anyway, here's your upper air for this week, and again, this is not the sort of upper air that you would normally see in the middle of June, but these are the cards we've been dealt. What interests me for at least tomorrow into Wednesday is the fact that the flow across Canada is, for the most part, disconnected from the flow that is across the United States. So that at least I think should argue that. Now I could be wrong on this, because The smoke was moving down here late last week in a very convoluted way. I mean, it was going from Alberta to Labrador and then turning southwest, going down into the Great Lakes, and it was just following the path of the flow of the upper atmosphere. This to me says, I mean, maybe some smoke could bleed through in a few places, but there's no real strong connection from with the jet in Canada like that and the jet that's across the southern part of the United States. That's why, by the way, with that jet across the southern U.S., you're seeing the heavy rains. You also see the wrapped up upper low that is over the eastern Great Lakes. This one is going to move along in a bit of a slightly different fashion than the one that was over the eastern U.S. last week. So this is just going to continue to inch along and move through. Now that it's interesting, Joe. Wednesday, that's the upper low holds together as like a cutoff upper low that comes through on Wednesday into Wednesday evening. I'm wondering with that system for Wednesday that maybe there will be some. Here's where we could see perhaps some low top vigorous thunderstorm activity.
Cool pool thunder.
Yes, with small hail, that sort of thing.
Well, you just showed a few minutes ago the SPC placing much of the Northeast in general thunderstorm activity on Wednesday. And how many times we've seen it twice now, where out of general thunderstorm activity on, let's say, day 3, that eventually or ultimately evolved into areas of marginal risk or even slight risk because, again, of the possibility, as you just mentioned, of low top convection generated by that dome of unusually chilly air aloft.
Yeah, I'm thinking there's a chance that we could see a marginal risk when we get there on Wednesday. Again, depending on how much daytime heating we get, but still, that's a pretty cold, unstable atmosphere with an upper low like that. And then that pulls out to the northeast, but then there's another arm that drops into the western lakes and swings around. And this is for Friday. And another cutoff low, Joe, forms over New York State, Pennsylvania. I mean, this is ridiculous. It's the middle of June, for God's sake, to be seeing this happening. But maybe this will be another chance that there could be some potentially some vigorous shower and thunderstorm activity. Then it lifts out. There's some kind of deep upper low that comes down from Alaska, drops down the west coast over the weekend, and there's still troughing left over in the east. So that probably argues against a picture-perfect weekend. I can see the tropical system on the GFS, Joe, that it does have it there near Nicaragua and then takes it now westward into Belize, which is, sort of what the European and the Canadian were showing, that whatever weather was down there was going to go west and eventually wind up in the Pacific. There's that east-west ridge in the Gulf of Mexico out into the Atlantic. It's sort of weak, but it's there, and there's nothing's going to come out of that. So in the meantime, as we move forward, still troughing into the east for next week. And, it just kind of hangs there. It really doesn't go away. Cut off the coast. Some ridging tries, but doesn't really succeed. But then toward the end of the forecast period, it does build a ridge in from Mexico, from New Mexico northeastward into the Great Lakes. We're sort of on the edge of it. Pretty interesting there. We'll see if that winds up being the case. Maybe toward the end of the month we might start seeing some much warmer temperatures overall. If that's the case, if that's right.
I have firesmoke.ca. I think this is the Canadian futurecast for smoke.
Oh, okay. Hold on, one moment. Let's put it up on the board. Go for it.
Okay. What you're seeing right now is the projection for 4 p.m. This was not a projection. This is what it was indicating for 4 o'clock this afternoon. Now we move forward in time, 5, 6. Notice, if you will, that we don't really get, we do get free temporarily. Back by 10 o'clock tonight, we're in a zone where there is no significant smoke projected in the immediate tri-state area. Of course, the air, for one, has been cleansed, we assume, by any rain or shower activity that's moving in and moving through during those few hours. But then, as we move beyond that, look what happens. the indication is that by 1 in the morning, the smoke makes a comeback and actually stays with us during the second half of the overnight into the first half of the day tomorrow. This is 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. And again, there is now, it's not a thick cloak of smoke, but there is apparently going to be a light ceiling of upper level smoke that's passing across the region. But notice also a large area of dry, clear weather, or just clear weather, over central and western Pennsylvania and eastern Ohio from the Ohio Valley. And if we keep moving that along, you could see that by the time we get to, this is 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the back edge of that light smoke cover is moving out and away to the east, and we are back in an area of clear, nice skies for tomorrow evening. At this time tomorrow evening, we apparently are going to be in a large opening of non-smoky weather. But look what's coming our way from the west. Another area of smoky conditions being driven along, I presume, by that upper level system, the one that we're talking about for Wednesday, which could bring some showers and possible convection. And indeed, by the time we get to 9 a.m. on Wednesday, we're back in the smoke again. And that continues. Now, the only good thing I can say about all this is that unlike last week, where we were seeing, dark brown, shades of dark brown, like 120 to 250 plus parts per million in the air, this zone that we're looking at for Wednesday is not going to be all that bad by those standards, anywhere from 1 to 10 parts per million. But still, if you want completely clear, free smoke conditions, you'll probably have to wait, if you believe in this model, until sometime later tomorrow, into tomorrow night, and into the first half of Wednesday before another round of smoke moves in as we move into later Wednesday and Wednesday night.
All right. And on the GFS tonight, you can see where the low east of the shores of Lake Huron and that northwest southeast aligned area of rain, because we don't see any thunderstorms in there. Maybe there is one or two embedded in there somewhere. That it's almost like this giant stick, and it's just lifting up and around, and you see the rotation around the Great Lakes because that's under the upper low, and it sits there. So a mostly dry day tomorrow, except up in northern New England and in and around the Great Lakes with that upper low sitting there. And then as we move into Wednesday and the upper low starts to swing around and move to the southeast and east, you have a surface low that's dropping southeastward into Pennsylvania. And there's your shower and thunderstorm activity potential for Wednesday afternoon into Wednesday evening. You see some heavier rains show up also in parts of Tennessee and down into Georgia and South Carolina on Wednesday, and then that moves out. And then as we move on through Thursday, as we wait, Thursday might be like Tuesday, you're in between systems because there's another cold front coming for Friday with some showers and maybe a thunderstorm or two with that. And then that goes out.
Can we see the maps?
Oh yeah, you need to tell me these things, Joe.
Well, I only flipped. I was looking at something else on the internet about more smoke information or more of it, and so I was not looking specifically at the show.
Oh, and I forgot to flip. So let me just run it back real quick. So you see what happens tonight, and then tomorrow, Wednesday, here comes the next low with the next cold front. Then that goes out. Then Friday we've got one that gets to the coast and gets hung up for a little while, and the models seem to be indicating that we could be see some showers still around during the day on the Friday on and off, and not covering every inch of geography. Saturday, even still some lingering showers in upstate New York and New England. But if you're south of New York City down in the mid-Atlantic states, you're okay. And then for Father's Day, I mean, this doesn't look too bad for Father's Day. There's another system dropping from Minnesota southeastward toward Virginia. So if that takes a track that far south, Father's Day should be okay. I mean, it may not be picture perfect, but it'll be okay. And as far as what this model, ultimately, it does develop some kind of tropical wave here in the southwestern Caribbean that turns westward and goes right into Belize and that's it. I mean, then it comes out on the Pacific side. The Pacific has not had its first named tropical storm yet, so that's a little bit overdue. If we're going into this El Nino pattern as advertised, usually the Eastern Pacific revs up, so we haven't had anything so far. But I wonder when they come, Joe. I think they're going to come quick. We'll probably get like 4 or 5 of them in a row.
Maybe 20, 30, 40 years ago, it was a lot easier. You see an El Nino or a La Nina, and you arbitrarily, based upon climatology, you say, okay, this is what an El Nino type situation provides. But you know what? Things have gotten so crazy, so complex over the last 10 or 15 years that really I don't think you can do that anymore. Arbitrarily say, all right, we're going into an El Nino. That means fewer hurricanes in the Atlantic basin, more in the Pacific. That may have worked 20, 30 years ago, but there's so many new oddities that have popped up or cropped up in the last decade or decade and a half. When you combine that with the so-called, like the NAO and this, that, it may not be so easy anymore to just arbitrarily say.
Well, look at what happened. Look at what happened in the West this year. I mean, that was a La Nina that looked like an El Nino.
Right, exactly.
If it was a true La Nina, California should have been, the Southwest should have been dry.
Maybe the sudden collapse of either a La Nina or an El Nino. I mean, like when I'm talking about a sudden collapse.
Right.
I mean, when they were going into they made their prediction, they being the Climate Prediction Center in October, La Nina was still hot and heavy and still going. And they said this is going to be the 3rd consecutive La Nina year. And then all of a sudden, abruptly, dramatically, La Nina collapsed, it seemed, like right into December. And that's when the doors opened up. And that's when we started seeing the, quote, atmospheric river surge hit California. And you're right, it seemed to be more of a El Nino than a La Nina pattern, although they officially did not declare La Nina dead.
Well, it really wasn't. It really wasn't dead through much of the winter. I mean, it kind of, you looked at the water temperature profiles in the Pacific. I mean, there was still large areas of below normal ocean water temperatures in the eastern and central Pacific well through the month of February. They just weren't as extreme, and they were shrinking clearly, but it wasn't completely gone. But I think the last time we looked, it was completely gone. So that'll also mean for lots of typhoons. So we'll see what kind of impact that has. You know what? I approach everything with an open mind when it comes to weather. I don't get too wrapped up into this La Nina, El Nino thing, because for me, the fun of it is the day-to-day stuff. So, if it turns out that it creates a weather pattern that Climo says should, then so be it. And if it turns out to be something different, we'll learn from it.
Right.
And that's all. And that's all there is to it.
And I remember also, for the longest time, they didn't come out with their winter forecast until Thanksgiving weekend. That was a traditional. That made me look forward to Thanksgiving. It was, of course, we all look forward to Thanksgiving, family holiday, big turkey, and all that sort of thing. I used to look forward to it because I said, okay, here's the weekend. We're going to get the long-range winter forecast. And then all of a sudden, in recent years, they pushed it all the way back to October. They start making these predictions. I guess they got so confident with themselves in the patterns of El Nino and La Nina. They said, oh, we can make a prediction about the wintertime, much earlier than we used to. Maybe they should think about going back to Thanksgiving weekend. That may give them a better chance of being right this year.
Well, on that note, let's switch over and do Briller Jeopardy on this Monday. Are you ready, Mr. Rayo?
On this Sunday?
Monday, I said.
Oh, I thought you said Sunday.
No, I said Monday. Okay, so today, folks, and of course everybody on the chat board should play along. We were doing average high temperatures for the month of June, so it's only logical that now we should do average low temperatures for the month of June. And we will begin with the city Rochester, New York. The average low temperature in Rochester, New York for the month of June. What say you, Mr. Rayo?
How about 60?
60. Is it 60? Nah.
Wikipedia agrees with me. She says 62.
60? No, but you know who just got it right almost from the get-go? Our Chuck Cardillo at 57, Joe. 57.
Well, I wasn't too far off.
Right. So then you would have had the mountain climber go up 3 steps.
Go over the cliff, right?
No, it wouldn't have been over the cliff. It's gone up 3 steps.
Oh yeah.
All right. So you got 25. So he went up 3. So I'm writing this down. Okay. A new fur. Well, they don't give away fur coats anymore. A new car is at stake. All right, next is that so exciting weather forecasting city, Joe, San Diego. San Diego.
Yes, San Diego. Well, I'll say 66.
Is it 66? Let's see what the chat board says. Tyler Fienger says 65. Patrick Darcy says 65. Helen Bertona says 62. Leon Probitsky, who hit Super Chat earlier, by the way. Thank you, Leon. Most appreciated. 64. And let's see. Jimmy Z, New Jersey, 62. Those of you in the 50s are all too low. Well, a bunch of you had said 62. Oh, yep. A bunch of you had said 62. And various other numbers in the 60s, but no one said 63, and the answer is 63. Chuck Cardillo just said 63. All right, so 63 it is, Joe. You have now taken 6 steps with the yodeler.
Okay.
Next is Francisco. Francisco.
How about 62?
62. Is it 62? Let's see. Chuck Cardillo says 59. Frank Riccio says 56. Michael Lazarus is 56. 55 from Jimmy Z. 54 from Poppy Prepper. That's hard to say. And Patrick Darcy. Yes. And Patrick Darcy. I don't know if at home they can hear that. I hope they did. 53, Joe. So you missed it by 10. So you're now sick. You're only 9 steps left with 2 to go. Okay. 53, Joe. So you missed it by 10. So you're now 6. I haven't heard that in years, decades. That was great. Oh, I should have thought of this sooner. Okay, next on the hit parade, it's Seattle, Washington. Seattle, Washington.
How about I'm going to go back with my Rochester today. 60 degrees.
60 degrees. You only got 9 steps left. Is it 60? Nope, not 60, Joe. I don't know.
Right.
Are you going to play the music again? Okay. Michael Lazara said 58. Patrick Darcy said 51. Matthew Howe gets it. 53 again, Joe. 53. And what did you say? 60, right?
Right.
So you only have 2 steps left before you go off the cliff. And the last one is Virginia Beach, Virginia.
Oh, God.
Virginia Beach, Virginia. So is everybody on board now? It's Virginia Beach, Virginia.
How about 67?
How about 67? Is it 67? Tyler Fienga, 64. Leon Pravitsky, 65. Maggie P hits it at 68. So You did not fall off the cliff.
I didn't fall off the cliff.
Yeah. So in other words, the music would have went la di do di. It was stop. Is that the end of that? Is that because
Believe it or not,
it very rarely plays that far ahead.
right? You can get like 3 minutes and 13 seconds of this music.
Oh,
And in case you're wondering, it's called the Cliffhangers theme song.
And it's from The Price is Right, by the way.
And the Price is Right cliffhanger.
Yes, that's too funny. I guess they still play that game.
I don't know. I stopped watching after Drew Carey took over. If you look at if you go on YouTube and watch a lot of the shows that are archived with Bob Barker was so great, especially when something would screw up.
Oh yeah.
Something took, he was so great working with the contestants. And Drew Carey just simply says, you won. You lost. Well, congratulations. That kind of thing. There was nobody like Bob Barker.
And he's still with us.
I think he's 98.
Yeah, 98.
98 years old.
98. He's same age as June Lockhart.
And June Lockhart is still with us.
And she's still lurking about, yes. Oh, God. Anyway. All right, let's wrap it up for tonight. We had some fun. We will see everybody tomorrow night at 7:35 p.m., our usual time. And, of course, the Joe and Joe Weather Show is brought to you by Tempest by Weather Flow. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system. Great Father's Day gift. Join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. If you use the referral link at the top of the chat board or on the descriptor to this video, and you purchase it before Father's Day, you will get more than 10% off. You don't even have to use the coupon code because they'll give you, if you do, they'll give you the higher discount. So $40 off the Tempest Weather Flow. And then you can use the coupon code on everything else they have, and you'll get 10% off of that. And Omni True Value Hardware, 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York. 631-756-1125 is the phone number, and the website is
omnitruevalue.com. Thank you again to both Leon Probitsky and Silent John for
Quiet John.
Quiet John?
Quiet John.
What? John, quiet. Anyway, thank you very much for your very generous tip jar contribution tonight on the Joe and Joe Show.
We'll see everybody tomorrow. Good night.
Good night.